record on this computer. So now the recording function is on. Okay, so in the previous section, we learned about the instrumental attributes and the symbolic attributes that are forming the employer brand in terms of content. The next part is to discuss where this content, where this image is coming from for potential applicants. And what you can see over here in the sources, we have on the one hand, we have the organizational actions and characteristics. And in your brainstorming, for example, you refer to newspaper articles and to any information that you can get on the organization. And that is one part that is a little bit more difficult for organizations actually to influence, because it's organizational actions and characteristics. So some things are just happening that are also then influencing them in terms of their employer brand. So for example, a very critical situation for an organization, losing a big customer, for example, all this can also influence, of course, then next, also potential applicants, because they are thinking twice if this is really the organization that they want to work in. But on the other hand, also, if an organization behaves in any way unethical or treats employees in a bad way or anything, this is also a very important function actually for organizations and a controlling function for organizations, because people will react on these news and on the organizational actions. And so this also forces organizations to behave and to act in ways that will be seen positive and that can positively contribute to their image. So this is both on negative and positive aspects. The next one, organizational information. So their website, for example, the content that they bring on their website. So very often you see that many organizations, for example, intentionally place content from inside. So you can see, for example, company gatherings. You can get very specific information about people working in this organization. So this whole opening up of organizations, opening their inside, showing their employees, showing kind of day-to-day actions, but also company gatherings and events is all a form of influencing the external image and making organizations accessible for outsiders. Also, advertisement is of course a very conscious way of organizations to influence potential applicants and to be very conscious about what image they aim to convey here. We will in the following also see some advertisements and I will ask you for your opinion. What do you think? Do they work? Do they not work? In which attributes are they targeting on? Number 3, recruiters. So when you, for example, have a job fair and you go there, you meet specific people, and recruiters can be both HR personnel, but also people who are working in the different functions. And actually, research shows that the best way to do this is to have a mixed team of different recruiters. So having on the one hand, HR people on board who can tell you about the benefits, the attributes, what the organization is doing, and can give you a broader perspective on human resources and also the organization. But then on the other hand, also having people from the line and from the different functions who can tell you on their day-to-day interactions. So for example, when I was working for BCG, it was totally part of our role also to take part in the recruiting events. So for example, going back to your home university and giving a presentation about BCG. So that is actually what all consulting organizations are doing, because this is, you really want to know what is the job, what are we doing, what are we expected to do, how does your day-to-day life look like, and that is, of course, it's more reliable information when it's coming from the people who are actually doing their job. and you perceive it as more credible than if this is coming from human resource management personnel. So in addition to recruiters, to their function, it's also very important their personal characteristics. So are recruiters approachable? Are they nice? Are they nice people? Do you perceive them as competent? Imagine you see a presentation by a recruiter and you just feel like this people is not knowing what he or she is talking about. So this will tremendously influence the perception that you have of the organization. So actually these very individual reasons can also have an influence on how you perceive the company. Of course, probably less than the actions, but also the organizational information, because you still see that as an individual, but nevertheless, you also perceive the individual as a reflection of the organization. And then the last part that you also had, the non-organizational information. So the non-organizational information that we have in media, that we have on platforms, we talked already about Kununu. I'm very sure you also know all those best employer rankings. So that is also non-organizational information. Very often we believe it to be a little bit more credible because it's coming from outside. It's giving you additional information rated independently, so not coming directly from the organization. This can also, for example, be, I don't know if you know the Xing New Work Awards, where organization can apply, especially with the human resource policies, for a new work award, and getting rewarded for their work in organizations and especially for their human resource practices. So this is also one form of outside credibility for your organization and for the culture that you have in your organization. And then the last part that you had, that was the big point, word of mouth. Yes, of course, word of mouth is very important. What people inside of the organization say about their organization to outsiders. Also, if they like to talk about their organization, is very influencing us. Also, it makes a huge difference if you talk about your organization, if you say they or we. That is already, so we notice apart from the content, it makes also a difference how people talk about their organization. And all this together are the different sources that all together create the content for employer branding. And given those very different sources, you can also imagine that it is not so easy actually to create an employer brand, because it's a very complex task and you have to manage a lot of different sources in order to influence this overall employer image. And with that, I will stop the recording